thank you very much for joining us here once again, as we're still working together to confirm some concrete details for what exactly took place on this aircraft as it crashed this in southern France. I'm going to bring once again back in France 24's Tom Burges Watson, who still joins us now on the line. Now, Tom, once again, at this point, we've got no distress signal. That's according to James Andre, who is outside French aviation headquarters here in Paris. No distress signal, good weather at this point in terms of what the wreckage appears to be. Firefighters on the scene. At the moment, it indicates it looks like there's no likelihood of survivors. Walk us through what we could be looking at here in terms of the causes.
Yeah, you mentioned the weather there. Just looking at a report issued by La Chaîne Météo, which is a respected weather source here in France. They say there were no adverse weather conditions whatsoever in that area of southern France at the time. So as we just heard from the pilot, and as indeed others have been saying, the weather looks extremely unlikely to have been a factor whatsoever. The only thing is there is snow on the ground in that area. It is, after all, a high-altitude area, which may have made reaching the scene rather a more complicated procedure than it would otherwise have been, although we are also receiving reports that helicopters are on the ground now in the area. But I think it was Chris Botman saying that the wreckage could be distributed over a very large area, as you'll recall with the Malaysian Airlines disaster. That plane was, we think, shot down over eastern Ukraine. The area which had wreckage scattered in it was an extremely large area of perhaps 10 kilometers of radius. So it could be a very complicated situation, but we haven't got any reports for the time being of any casualties on the ground, which could have happened had an aircraft come down in a very densely populated area. There's no reports of that so far. One interesting piece of information coming from Le Figaro is that the aircraft was not a new one. This shouldn't be a factor at all, because these aircraft are built for a very long working life, and quite often a European airline will sell one of its aircraft to another airline in another country, and the aircraft will then have another perhaps 10 or 15 years of working life. But according to Le Figaro, this aircraft, this A320, if indeed it was an A320, because we are still to receive official confirmation that that's the aircraft type that it was 24 years old. So 24 years old is quite old. It's not. It sounds older than it really is. When you think of a 24-year-old car, you think it's of a very old car, but aircraft do continue operating for decades, and of course they have all their parts changed so often that really very little on an aircraft is indeed 24 years old, even if the aircraft manufacturing date was one of 24 years ago. But a lot of unknowns at this stage, as is often the case. Why did flight 9525, that was the flight number of this aircraft, 9525, what caused it to go down? We just don't know. So many theories. And some of them seem to be conflicting at the moment. So we're trying to piece together what we have, but it's looking like, as we've heard from the authorities, and as I said before, unusual that the authorities would have said no survivors likely at this early stage, because it is difficult to know that with any certainty, given the size of the search area.
Now, Tom, so as you say there, yes, indeed, we've got really a host of unknowns at this point, as even a search and rescue. The aircraft has been located. We understand the helicopters are on the ground. Firefighters are on the scene. That being said, we do not know the cause of the crash, but at this point, authorities are going to be coming together, both from Airbus, from authorities here in France, aviation officials here in France, German officials as well. This also representing Germanwings Airline, as well as Lufthansa, as well as Spanish authorities. Walk us through, at this point, just the sheer logistics of making sure that the investigation and everything gets underway smoothly.
Well, it is, as you said, it's complicated because you've got a number of countries involved here, and we don't even know the nationalities of all the people on board, although we were saying earlier we can assume that a large number of them were German and Spanish, and this has happened on a third country's territory, naming French soil. But Chris was saying earlier on that France and Germany, of course, work very closely being partners in Airbus. A lot of the staff at Airbus are, the majority of the management are either French or German, which will mean that their coordination, if indeed, as I said, I want to stress again, if we can confirm this was an Airbus aircraft, because we just haven't had that from an official source yet, that this was an A320. But that being the case, and that being likely, given that Germanwings does have a number of these aircraft type in its fleet, around 16 of them to be precise, it seems that the good news is that Germany and France do already work very closely together on this very Airbus project. So establishing causes and establishing any other possible leads, there is already a very good line of communication in place between French and German authorities when it comes to aviation, in particular involving Airbus aircraft. So this is going to be complicated. It's equidistant, roughly, where this plane went down from where it began and was due to end its journey, halfway, roughly, between Barcelona and Dusseldorf. But this aircraft, as we were saying earlier on, is part of the Lufthansa fleet of aircraft now. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Lufthansa. Germanwings carries out all of their short-haul flights for them, and it's been part of the company for around 6 years. The two have been working together for 6 years now. So it's going to be there's going to be a lot of questions asked in Germany, in particular, where there has been a considerable amount of annoyance at the industrial action and the disruption that has caused to German air travelers in the course of the last year. Germanwings crew have been on strike no less than 10 times during the course of the last year, and often what happens during strikes involving aviation staff is that there is this call for, there are concerns raised about safety. So many people in Germany, where that story has perhaps been most closely followed, will be joining the dots, and they'll be wondering whether perhaps management perhaps could have avoided a scenario where crew were flying longer than their normal hours, or whatever it was that management was demanding of the crew, that sent the unions on strike and calling for strike action. So there's so many question marks at this particular moment. But it's as we've heard from the French authorities, that it's very unlikely that anyone has survived. And what we know in terms of the passenger manifest is there were 142 passengers, 2 pilots, and 4 cabin crew, so a total of 148 people on board that aircraft, which appears to have gone down around 150 kilometers from the city of Nice.